All right, welcome back. Why am I interested in augmented reality? And it's really because I think it's going to change every aspect of your business and our lives. So how many folks here do not have their cell phone on them? So there's nobody. Nobody doesn't have your cell phone. Now, if I'd gone back 10 years, that would have been some significant portion of the room would not have their cell phone. That's fundamentally like saying, I'm leaving a part of my brain behind. That cell phone, I believe, is eventually going to disappear into a pair of glasses that we're going to be wearing. Those glasses are going to be our communications tool. It's going to be our information tool. Our I/O, our input-output devices, our eyes, our ears, our senses are really limiting in that regard. But so is the 300 million pattern recognizers in our brain, right? Ray Kurzweil talked about that. We have a limited amount of knowledge. These pattern recognizers are 100 neurons each in our cortex, our neocortex, and when you've used them, you've used them. Now, imagine if you could expand to the cloud. And what AR, augmented reality, is going to do for us, and it's just in the deceptive, about to go disruptive over these next couple of years, is change how we can have just-in-time information into our brain. And before we have brain-computer interface, which a number of companies are working on, I might bring that into the fold next year as a conversation if you want, along with nanotechnology. Until then, we've got augmented reality. Can I present to my iris your information when I'm talking to you, and have the AI monitoring our conversations bring up to me information about, oh, you just had your birthday, your kid's birthday, whatever the case might be. Or can I see the world with enriched information layers? If you look at this, this is a recent study looking at the growth in AR and VR. AR is the darker line, right, which represents probably about 4 times the revenue potential of virtual reality. And so by 2020, we're talking about, $120 billion of business going on, 3/4 of which is augmented reality. So you don't know it now, but I'm not sure if it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, or 7 years from now, you're all going to be wearing AR glasses. That's my belief. And so why and how? That's what our next conversation is going to be about. Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, said, I believe that every walk of life and every human activity which today is mediated on computers will be transformed by AR. Recently, at the Apple shareholder meeting, Tim Cook said there's virtual reality and there's augmented reality. Both of these are incredibly interesting, but my own view is that augmented reality is the larger of the two, probably by far. So, I want you to understand and get excited about augmented reality. It's going from deceptive to disruptive. How are you going to use it? How is it going to change the way you interact with your world, with your clients? I want you to get understanding enough about it so you can start to think about how you're going to use it. Right? There are 4 major companies, sort of the leaders in augmented reality: HoloLens, ODG, Meta, and Magic Leap. I'm very honored to have HoloLens here. So let me properly introduce Alex Kipman. Alex is the Technical Fellow of New Devices and Windows and Devices Group at Microsoft. As an innovator, Kipman has led 4 major breakthrough products for the company, including the Kinect, Microsoft Kinect. HoloLens is his latest product, bringing holograms to Windows. Kipman is named as the primary inventor on more than 150 patents since joining Microsoft in 2001. Please help me welcome Alex Kipman. Real pleasure. So, Alex, you're going to present for about 30 minutes, sort of where it is, where it's going. You and I will have a little conversation for 10, 15 minutes, and open it up for 45 minutes for this mastermind conversation.
Exciting. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, pal.
So I want to first start by thanking Peter for inviting me to participate in this amazing community in the tribe of Abundance 360. I've enjoyed the morning listening to you guys, talking to you, and I look forward. I'm really excited to start a dialogue today here with you around mixed reality. Now, we should start the conversation at the basic. should define the term. Symbology matters. We should talk about what is mixed reality. At the end of the day, all of us, you and I, live today in two parallel universes, two different dimensions that until now have never intersected. One of the universes we live in is this one that you and I are physically present in right now, a universe made out of atoms, the universe of analog. We have chosen to be here today, anchored in a physical location, this ballroom, anchored in a given point in time, where we compose the situation of today by putting lots of different people in this physical location, intermediated with technology and many other objects, to essentially create a moment in time, to create a moment where we can collaborate, or we can learn, where we can be entertained, and we can move forward as a species by being together in this physical location. I can draw a parallel to it to the other universe, the universe that we've been talking about all day today, the universe that's made out of bits, or a digital universe. Or again, if you think about what you're doing when you check some email, when you go hang out on Facebook, or even when you're watching television, there's always now a digital location whereby digital representations of self come together to, again, create a situation. Now, the two are very different, because in the real world, the situations we create happen to be very, very immersive. You can't get more immersive than real life. They happen to be connected, and they happen to be in real time. The con, the badness of it, and at the root why we use technology all day long, is you can't change this idea of space and time. On the other side, you can change space and time. Technology, at the end of the day, allows us these two superpowers, displacement of space and time. But on the other hand, it's not real time. It's not immersive. And we all choose to be here today in person because you get so much more out of your senses by being together. Now, with the advent of sensors, with the advent of artificial intelligence, and the advent of compute, for the first time ever, we are now able to intersect these two universes, and mixed reality is the term that defines the intersection between the analog and the digital, between atoms and bits, between what is real and what is virtual, by essentially merging the positives of both universes. The fact that it's immersive, the fact that it's connected in real time, while maintaining the ability for us as humans to now have the superpower to displace space and time. Now let's get out of the abstract, and let's start talking about this concept that ranges from augmented reality to virtual reality to everywhere in between. If you ever see me talk publicly, I always use this term of mixed reality, which is the umbrella term that goes from both ends of the spectrums. Because at the end of the day, despite where either began, if you began with a virtual reality experience or an augmented reality experience, as you move forward in time, devices will be capable of doing both. So essentially, I want to start here with a scene. It's a scene completely in the real universe. There's no technology, there's no digital anything in it. And again, I'm going to point your attention that there's always a physical location that composes a situation with humans and some objects. Now, imagine for a minute that all of us have a magic dial, a mixed reality dial that allows us to manually manipulate the humans, the environments, and the objects. If I click one dial to the right, the first thing that you see is that you can now start putting digital assets or objects in the real world with more reality than ever before. Think about, all of a sudden, being able to view information, view your big data over objects in the real world. Think about being the person fixing a turbine of an engine, of an airplane, being able to forward predict and visualize over the engine where the issues are going to happen before they actually take place. Think about being an elevator operator, needing to fix an elevator, and being able to, again, have someone remotely annotate, hands-free, over the elevator to make that complex task of fixing or maintaining that elevator happen more, better, faster, or cheaper. Now imagine for a minute I turn the dial one more, and now all of a sudden the human themselves are able to be mixed into the situation. Now the power of this is that it gives you the superpower to teleport. Imagine for a minute, being able to, I'm from Brazil, and my entire family is in Brazil, and I work at Microsoft, so I'm in Seattle. What would happen if every weekend I could literally, in an immersive way, teleport to Brazil to, have dinner or create a situation around a dinner table with my brother, my sister, or my cousins? Imagine if you didn't have to take that next business trip to walk a manufacturing floor across the globe, and instead you could just teleport there and walk that manufacturing floor, seeing what other people are seeing, having the context and the presence as if you were there in real life. Let's turn the dial one more. And if in the first one I played with objects, and in the second one I played with people, now you can play with the environments themselves. And here you see how there is really no difference between augmented reality all the way to virtual reality. It's just a matter of how much of the dial between environments, objects, and people are you dialing between the world of digital, or the world of bits, and the world of analog, or the world of atoms. Now here, all of a sudden, I can take a walk on Mars, way before we are able to put space men on the surface of Mars, or women, hopefully, in the surface of Mars. Think about, being able to go to fantastical spots. Think about what this does in education when you can actually displace the physical environment in time. And your children can learn about dinosaurs by walking through that era in real time, creating a situation with all of their fellow students and teachers alike. So that's a little bit about mixed reality in context of terms. Now I want to show you a video of what life in mixed reality can look like. And for all that we talk here about mixed reality being the future, I would question and say mixed reality is already here. The future is already here, and it's just not evenly distributed. So let me show you an example of what life with these devices that we are talking about looks like, and think about it, how it disrupts and revolutionizes how we work, how we communicate, how we learn, and how we play. So now this person walks in through a scene. This is where she works. She's designing a new shoe store. She has a portable device. This is Microsoft HoloLens. It's a self-contained holographic computer. She puts it on with all the sensors. The scene gets recognized. It gets digitized. And all of that information comes in with all of the data for this store that she's designing, the shoe store that she's designing. She uses gaze, gestures, and voice to manipulate the scene. Real-world physics play. Haptic feedback happens through feel of friction. Digital assistants with a body, or AI with a body, creating a new sense of trust between human and machine.
Not yet. Just bring the team in, please.
I can see you're hard at work, Samir, but Penny needs your help.
Yeah, sure thing. Just let me
Device
check out this
2.
bunker real quick.
This is an opaque, tethered virtual reality device participating in the same situation.
Just awesome.
Kai-san, ペニーが呼んでいますけど。
今すぐ行くって伝えて。
Enters a teleportation room.
Penny?
The human that teleports in high definition. The other two that do not have sensors on the environment show up as a low-resolution version of self, which you can do by doing 3D capture of their faces ahead of time.
Not exactly blowing my hair back.
Yeah,
They all
space
share the
truck
same
units.
environment, the same
How about a change of scenery?
situation, the same physical location.
Welcome to Think Club.
Welcome to the Internet of the Future, bot-intermediated metaverse.
Some inspiration, please.
Namaste.
Wait.
Inspiration comes from the most unfamiliar places. I meet you, you are now me. Information set.
They start collaborating. They forget they're not in the same physical location. They're in different places of the world, collaborating as if they were around the same table. result, a much better looking store. Boss comes in,
またギリギリなのね。
real-time translation.
Impressive.
That went well.
具体的にしていきましょう。もっと細かいの。
Holographic fist bump. So let's talk a little bit about the devices that exist today that allow you to participate in this mixed reality landscape. The first one, which I introduced 2 years ago, is Microsoft HoloLens. The first, and to this day, still only, fully self-contained holographic computer. Many sensors, custom silicon, special optics, and a brand new operating system created for mixed reality. Let's walk a little bit to the magic of HoloLens. Sensors. Over 16 sensors, lenses, to allow you to visualize this world holographically. Special silicon, our own holographic processing unit to be able to process terabytes of data all in real time. Passively cooled, no fans, spatial audio so that you can get depth of presence by listening to audio in a non-occluding way in 3 dimensions. Now, this device, as I talked about, is entirely self-contained. It means it has no connection to a cell phone, has no connection to a computer. It works in any different location. No setup required, no need to put markers in the space or do some crazy setup. As you might have experienced here, you put it on and the experience just happens. You start seeing holograms spin in the real world with incredible level of precision to be able to do that. Now, this is, to some extent, was introduced 2 years ago and still remains today the highest watermark of what a device for mixed reality is in the world today. But it's not the only way that you can participate in this ecosystem. As a matter of fact, last year, we introduced over 5 different devices that can participate in this mixed reality landscape. We announced last October that with HP, Dell, Lenovo, Acer, and Asus, we are bringing these devices to market. Now, these aren't see-through devices. They're not self-contained. They're accessories to PCs. As a matter of fact, these are virtual reality devices capable of participating in mixed reality. Now, these happen to be the best virtual reality devices out there. Highest resolution, ability to work with no setup, ability to do inside-out 6 degrees of freedom so that you don't have to just spectate the world, but you can actually participate in it. Now, these devices tether to any PC, and they happen to be the most affordable devices out there today. These devices you see here, and we're missing 2, start at $299. Plug it into your PC, and you can start participating in this mixed reality landscape. To just put it in perspective, Microsoft HoloLens is a $3,000 product for that fully self-contained holographic computer. So with that, I want to give you concrete examples across communication, across education, across productivity and entertainment. Over the last 2 years, we have been partnering with over 36 different industries to, in a partnership, figure out what is this mixed reality thing good for. At the end of the day, I feel pretty good that I can understand what mixed reality is about. But I know nothing about all of these different industries. Now, you take a given industry, take education. When you talk to some of the best educators out there, they'll tell you what their needs are. They'll tell what their dreams and aspirations are, but they don't necessarily know what holograms are good for. So we come together with these people, and we essentially spend 3 days ideating. We get their best team from their industry, we get our team together, and we spend 3 days iterating and ideating, where we go from thousands of different ideas. We start with stickies on a whiteboard about all our different dreams and what we think we could do for that industry. And based on the capability of the devices today, we whittle it down from many, many ideas to 1. And then we agree on that one story, and then we pilot it. We create a proof of concept over the span of 3 months. We co-locate our engineers. We co-locate Microsoft engineers with engineers from that industry, and we reduce to practice the idea that we came up with. Now, not all succeed. Some fail. If they fail, we try again. We do something else. We fail fast and we fail often in the space. But when we succeed, now all of a sudden we have a case study for that whole industry of where mixed reality is capable of digitally transforming that industry in a meaningful way with these new technologies. So I have 4 of those examples. These are 4 different industries that we have piloted over the last 4 years. And as of last year, all 4 of these examples are now deployed in production. The first one is around communication. And I want to show you an example from ThyssenKrupp. ThyssenKrupp is the #1 elevator company in the world, and they're using mixed reality to essentially digitally transform the way that they do business. Let's take a look.
Over 1 billion people ride elevators each day, which places the industry in a primary role to respond to the challenges of urbanization. ThyssenKrupp's mission is to drive the elevator industry north. We want to do better and want to really push the envelope for what we are doing.
We need to enable our people to use the latest technology possible and available, and HoloLens is such a device where we see potential to serve our customers better.
The introduction of HoloLens to our operations will empower the over 20,000 field service engineers in doing the job better, more efficient. Increasing availability of elevators and escalators makes the job more safe and more fun for our people as well.
The scenario we have developed is really about dispatching a service technician using HoloLens in very different kind of ways.
So as soon as the technician puts on his HoloLens, he already sees, I have a call here, I need to go to this elevator, and then actually sees a 3D picture of the elevator that he's going to work on, and that he can zoom into a part that will offer you also training opportunities.
He goes to the job site prepared, probably better prepared than ever before, because he has the relevant data available to him in the best format possible, and in a variety of ways he can tailor the data towards his need.
The technician putting on his HoloLens, looking at the elevator, sees the historical notes first, so what has actually happened with this elevator before. He already has all the information right there without having to look for it. It saves a lot of time and a lot of stress and effort.
He gets information on his virtual desktop about the task orders he has to carry out,
the latest safety alerts for that elevator.
He pulls on a 3D replication of that part, pulls it out in an exploded view, and can actually see which part is making the problem.
A major advantage of the HoloLens, of course, is that we are hands-free, and we never had that experience and the capability before.
In the past, the technician needed both of his hands to operate the laptop, and now he just has his HoloLens on.
One of the most important capabilities we see with HoloLens is that we can trigger a remote call to a subject matter expert.
Call Heather.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm replacing a doorboard out here, but I kind of want you to check a couple things out.
Okay, let me take a look. Your JP3 is in the right position, and your motor leads are disconnected, so you're good to go.
It takes a lot of stress out, it saves a lot of time, and our field tests have shown that there's a huge potential to increase productivity with that. A job which normally takes 1 to 2 hours and maybe ends up with having the expert traveling to the site, we were able to carry it out on the first time in less than 20 minutes. And what we are striving to do at ThyssenKrupp Elevator is really creating new, interesting technologies to build the city of tomorrow.
So as an example of communication, the next thing I want to show you is one in education. And this is a partnership we've done with Case Western Reserve University, a medical school, where they're trying to reinvent the entire medical curriculum in the entire medical school holographically. Now, I didn't know this. I'm not a doctor. But you find out very quickly that, teaching medicine is a field that hasn't really been innovated on in over 100 years. To this day, medicine is still learned primarily by looking at some, sketches on a book and by operating on cadavers. Now, the thing you find out about cadavers is that it turns out that they're dead. And turns out that, doctors tend to operate on humans that hopefully will remain alive. So from that perspective, you look at a fourth-year medical student and you show them a body, holographic, mixed reality body on an operating table with the blood going, with the heart moving, with the nervous system doing what it's supposed to be. And the medical student sees that and in 5 minutes looks at the teacher and says, my God, I never really understood how the heart worked. Now, fourth-year medical student, I find this alarming. I look at the teacher and I ask him, I said, not such a good student. And he happens to be one of the top students in the class. So I say, well, when do these kids actually learn this? And he says they learn this mostly in residency. So if you want to take a look, here's the impact that mixed reality is having at Case Western Reserve University in terms of revolutionizing how they do education. They're in their second semester teaching this to medical students.
We've been teaching human anatomy the same way for 100 years. Students get a cadaver, then they look at medical illustrations, and it's completely two-dimensional, and the human body isn't.
Microsoft HoloLens is a holographic computer that you wear. It enables you to bring your digital world into your real world.
At Case Western Reserve University, we are focused on solving problems and creating new knowledge.
My job is to teach, and I really think this could impact almost everything that we teach people. With HoloLens, you can see the muscles on top of the skeleton all at the same time. You can bring them in and out and exactly understand where things sit.
You can take any anatomical part and show any of it. You can move it around, you can make it kind of translucent so you can see through the outside, and that really helped me understand how cardiac anatomy worked. I actually had a moment where I found the aortic valve, and it was the first time that I'd actually seen the aortic valve in relation to all the other anatomical structures. It was a way of seeing it that you couldn't do with an actual heart.
I think this will improve students' confidence in learning anatomy dramatically.
By creating simulations with the HoloLens that lets them have an experience where they can fail, that would be the best way to learn, because we don't allow people to fail too much in real-life medicine.
With HoloLens, you could imagine having a class standing around a model, almost like a tour group in a museum, where they're all interacting completely naturally. I spend a huge amount of time to make sure they become the best professionals, because it's all of our jobs to make the world a better place.
Working with Case Western Reserve University to create this paradigm shift so that we can leap together with students into the future of education. We believe that HoloLens is going to enable us to do that.
We talked about being able to use it to teach art history. We have an anthropology department too that I think will enjoy this technology.
Anytime you change the way that you see things, it changes the way that you understand them. As soon as you can change somebody's understanding, then they can change the way they see the world.
I hope you're seeing a pattern evolve here across all of these different industries and different experiences you can create with mixed reality. This next one is about Trimble. Trimble, is using mixed reality to really revolutionize from the way that you architect buildings to the way that you present architecture to whoever you're presenting it to really how you close the loop from a productivity sense to the people in the construction site, and really close that loop so that the architect can see from the eyes of the people building that building and in real time make adjustments and keep track of a very difficult and complex workflow, which is building complex structures in today's day and age.
Architects are dealing with shapes and spaces and light, and they dream in 3D. And then you need to translate this design into a set of 2D documents. HoloLens presents a completely new paradigm. Trimble provides design solutions for architects and structural engineers.
Anything that involves getting dirty is our business. Literally hundreds of enterprises can be represented on a job site. Today, the best way those companies have to interact with each other is paper drawings. But people aren't good at visualizing 3D.
Microsoft HoloLens is a head-mounted, self-contained computer that lets you see holograms in the real world.
You get the physical model as a focus point for the team to collaborate around. And you get the hologram with the flexibility, with the ability to run quick iterations.
You'll see how we've brought in the courtyard that you suggested. You see that mouse go off the screen and into holographic space. and you're then interacting with the hologram with the mouse.
The thing that we can do for architects is really give them much higher confidence around decision making. One way we can do that is we can allow them to literally immerse themselves in the scene that they're building and see street side how the building's going to look.
Visualizing design data in the context of the real environment is a much better way to make sure that the design is implemented correctly on site.
Microsoft HoloLens allows you to collaborate with somebody regardless of distance, like they were there. Hello there.
Hey Igor, where they're trying to put this door, there's a beam behind here.
I'm looking at this beam. We're interacting with it about a problem that we can see and being able to solve that problem with all the data that we need in front of us in real time.
When I'm talking about enterprise construction, I always compare it to people trying to make music together. Each one of them is contributing to the harmony, but they all should be completely synced.
My gray hair says I've been doing this for a while. I've seen a lot of these new things come and go. And I expect in 5 years, we'll all be interacting with the world with this kind of technology.
Now, for those that know who Greg Lynn is, important, famous architect out there, Greg is using HoloLens and this Trimble software to redesign an entire factory in space in Detroit by using this from the very beginning to the end of the construction project. Now, the last one is around entertainment. I'm going to show you an example of how Legendary is using mixed reality to connect their fan base to their brands.
Legendary, although we're primarily known as a film and television company, we really see ourselves as being world builders that are in the experience business. What's unique about HoloLens is you can literally reach into the movie and bring these characters and these elements right out of the non-interactive medium into the interactive world that you live in every day.
At Legendary, fandom is in our DNA, and so we're always looking for ways to extend our worlds to our fans in new and interesting ways. And we're excited about HoloLens because it's one of the first ways we've seen where our characters can become real and be in the room with you. And that's the final frontier.
Microsoft HoloLens is a computer that you can wear on your head, and it brings virtual characters and objects into the space around you. A big component of what my team does internally is educating artists in our offices in what this technology is and what it can do. We can use this for pre-visualization for art directors to see sets before they're built. And then there's also just the pure entertainment side. In Warcraft, it just made a lot of sense to use the HoloLens to bring those characters to life.
The holographic video capture stage is a wonderful magic trick. We can have one of our actors captured in a full 360-degree medium and then be projected holographically.
Legendary has an extreme wealth of wonderful films and incredible IPs like Warcraft and Pacific Rim. And with HoloLens, fans can put holograms with their favorite characters into their real environments and create videos that you can then share online.
It's not enough just to put a movie out now. I think there's a constant hunger from our always-on social media society to be entertained and connect to the projects that you're interested in.
For me, the excitement of working with HoloLens is seeing how it redefines the entertainment canvas. We are always looking to find where those invisible boundaries between the entertainment and the audience are being broken down.
At the premiere of Warcraft, Rob Kaczynski got to stand next to the HoloLens version of Orgrim in a mixed reality environment. And it was sort of a bizarrely meta, magical moment to see him interacting with animations based on his acting.
Being able to look at entertainment through the HoloLens is genuinely being able to look at entertainment in a new way.
Hopefully this sparks the imagination and gives us a good foundation to start a conversation. Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is have just a few-minute conversation together with you, Alex, right now. Then we're going to ask you in your groups to have a conversation for about 5-10 minutes about what are you seeing here. And then we're going to go to the group conversation for 45 minutes. So my mind races rapidly forward to a point where mixed reality, and I'll use your terminology, I like that, becomes my normal reality, where I feel a cognitive disruption when I don't have my mixed reality headset on. It's like if I leave my phone alone, except in my little phone bed at night when I think about Ariana and go to sleep. I'm like wondering. So do you imagine there'll be a point where walking around without having augmented mixed reality capability is walking around naked at a disadvantage?
I think at the end of the day, our journey with technology is one that has really existed for less than 100 years. All right? So to a certain extent, as an art form, we're super nascent and brand new. The rate of invention is so fast, and the amount of creation still to be had or discoveries to be made is near infinite. So from that perspective, I do see this as the next evolution, the next secular trend for how we do interact with technology. And to some extent, less than feeling naked by being without technology, I do see the potential of this to really make us more human and bring us back to this kind of human component, which at the end of the day is how are we interacting with other humans? So how are we going about our day, interacting with other humans for whatever purpose that may be, in a world that technology kind of disappears. For me, success in this world is almost thinking about the device, that thing you're going to put to bed at night, as almost just a lens into the world.
Sure.
And the device doesn't become meaningful anymore at that point. What becomes meaningful is the humans that exist in that space.
And I was moved by your conversation around your family being in Brazil, right? I live here in LA, in Santa Monica. My mom's in Boca. My sister is in Thessaloniki, Greece. And it's always a struggle about when am I going to see them. But the potential for mixed reality is to have them in my life to some degree more than ever. I mean, FaceTime has really changed the game. The Beam robot has changed the game. But here's a chance to even change it even further, to have your Thanksgiving dinner and set up a chair where your family members are sitting and having them there and having a conversation and seeing them. Is that where we're going?
That's exactly correct. And at the end of the day, I think our journey, and we heard that throughout the day today, is one of how do you become more present, right? And to a certain extent, I love the fact that we use technology all day long, but these things have made us have shallower relationships. And, honestly, when we talked about it today, have made us, more often than not, be less present. I think this next turn of the crank with technology is one that kind of takes us back to this moment of creation, where humans as creators, as opposed to humans as consumptive. Think about what you do with these devices over the last 10 or so years. More and more, the behavior has become one of consumption. And you sit on that phone from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, consuming, and you're not creating, and you're not present in the moment. My hope with these technologies is to turn that back, to go back to that moment in time where humans are more present, and kind of go back to this ability of empowerment and using technology to empower us to achieve more.
I love the fact that you were showing an AI agent there with you, right? So this is the combination of AI and mixed reality, and the notion that you can turn the intent in your mind into reality, and you can almost have a conversation that says, I'd love to create something and describe it and have the AI interface sort of say, does it look like this? And you can say, no, rotate it like there, and then can you change the materials it's made of and actually manifest what's in your mind in rapid iteration? So be more creative, as you're saying.
Absolutely.
So the first Motorola brick phones were brick phones, and now we have phones that are so small you can't hold them sometimes. Where is the technology going to go for these headsets? Where do you imagine over the next 5+ years?
I think there's 3 dimensions that I think a lot about with these devices. And the one I don't spend a ton of time thinking about counterintuitive as it may sound, is at what point do these things get smaller, or even to a certain extent, lighter weight on the head? Because I think there's 3 problems that come before that that will require us to innovate for, when you pick a horizon of 5 years out. The first one is comfort. I spend a ton of my time thinking about comfort. This is a device that closes the loop with the human body. Mm-hmm. And if you start thinking about, the range of weight on these products, probably the lightest one is pulling at 60 grams, the heaviest one is at 600 grams. The point being is your normal pair of spectacles that any one of you may be wearing is less than 10 grams. And if you're going to have anything more than 60 grams, you're no longer distributing that weight on cartilage. You're putting that weight on bone as a means to comfortably distribute that weight, which changes the problem around to one where you're kind of designing a car. You start thinking less about weight and you start thinking more about center of gravity. Start thinking more about moment on the head as you move these things around. And you're trying to actually add weight to the devices to make them more comfortable, to at the end of the day fit any head size, any nose shape, any physiological aspects of the human. And there's a long journey for all of us. Like these devices, I don't care if they're tethered and opaque or if they're self-contained and see-through, they're not comfortable to be worn all day long. HoloLens, in a metricated way, is the most comfortable device out there, bar none. And it's comfortable for about 45 minutes. Average human population using the product, after 45 minutes, you're going to start feeling it on your head. Now think about the delta from 45 minutes to an all-day wear device. So that, to me, is a huge journey for all of us over the next 5 years, is one of comfort, which is less than one of size. The next one is one of immersion. And at the end of the day, how do we start ratcheting up the level of immersion of these devices? From the opaque ones that we need to start seeing through things, to the self-contained see-through ones that will start needing to go opaque, to the introduction of new feature set, from eye tracking to foveated rendering, to any number of different technologies to really allow these technologies to make you perceive like something is really there, or as a matter of fact, that you are physically present in a different location. So that's another huge journey over the next 5 years. Now, mind you, as you increase immersion, you're adding more stuff. More stuff in the universe you and I live in also carries with it weight. So to increase comfort, why are you increasing immersion? These things aren't getting smaller. Actually, a lot of the innovation goes on how do you keep it the same, right? As everything's exponentially going up, how do you make sure that these devices are not linearly scaling as you're increasing immersion or as you're increasing comfort? And then the third dimension I think about is actually price and affordability. At the end of the day, I much rather have a HoloLens that you can wear all day long, where you have full immersion, the same set of senses that you have in the real world, at under $1,000. And I do believe that in the next 5 years will all happen. I think we'll ratchet up comfort to be all-day comfort. I think we'll ratchet immersion to approach human perception in every aspect of the category. And I think the price points will drop so that you can essentially have these fully featured, self-contained computers become more affordable. And then after that, I think they start getting smaller. But to a certain extent, I'm going to answer my kind of deep-seated belief statement. I think you'll get rid of the device before physics allows you to get smaller.
Okay. So I would love you to take 5 minutes now on your bold actions and insight table and think about how is augmented reality going to be useful to you? Are you going to be using it to interact with your clients, with your suppliers, to give you data, to create better educational experiences, to train yourself, to train your individuals? And then we're going to come back, and I'd like you to put forward to Alex your hypothesis, and come back with, listen, this is my business, this is what I do, how do you imagine I could use augmented reality? Or mixed reality, is that a fair? This is your chance to say, okay, listen, it's going to happen. I guarantee you, right? There's billions of dollars going into this, right? You just saw the numbers, the anticipated, $120 to $200 billion industry. We've got at least 4 major players pouring capital in. These devices are going to become higher resolution available. You're going to have applications coming in. So here's your chance to look at, 2 to 5 years ahead. How are you going to use this? This is, I believe, technology going from deceptive to disruptive. How are you going to use it? Jot down some ideas, and then we'll give you 5 minutes now to think about it, chat about it, and then you'll have Alex and I out here for 45 minutes to bounce your ideas off of. All right? Let's get some thinking music on. Thank you. Alex, how long have you been heading the effort on HoloLens and the holographic technology now?
It's interesting because depends how you want to count. To some extent, you can say Connect is the inhale to what HoloLens is the exhale. The future, to some extent, is path dependent. And unless you can innovate at every layer of the stack, you don't kind of come up with something like HoloLens. So I began my journey with this breaking the barrier of the digital to pour it into the analog about 2008. So almost 9 years ago now. It's January. Matter of fact, 9 years ago this month. And the result of the first 18 months of that project resulted in Connect, which is essentially a set of sensors for purposes of understanding humans, environments, and objects.
Yeah, and Microsoft Connect has those sensors that are detecting you and seeing your emotions and your hand movements and creates a brand new interactive means with a computational system, right? And are those sensors now part of HoloLens then?
Almost. You can think about this quest of trying to understand the world you and I live in as, again, dividing down humans, environments, and objects. A different axis that's useful to think about is dividing the perspective of machine looking out as either input, machine sucking in things, sensors, output, porting digital assets as photons over the real world, and ultimately haptic feedback, which is about exchanging energy. So you can push a holographic object and you push it back with equal force. On the human input side of the world, Connect did 3 things in that space. It innovated in terms of applying machine learning for the purposes of identification, right? So you could get in front of the sensor and you recognize who you are. At the time, we did about 1 in 50 false accepts with about 75% true positives. It also did speech. The first shipping speech recognition system to consumers, where, think of it as short vocabularies, command and control. You could do things like Xbox on, Xbox turn off, Xbox being Harry Potter. And ultimately, the thing that you suggested, which is, tracking humans, 20 joints for the body, 2 people at a time, 30 frames per second, which is how you played some, workout games, some music games, and things like that. All of those technologies have progressed since. Speech has become Cortana, our personal assistant, and natural language understanding, 25,000 words in its vocabulary, and a hybrid interface to our intelligence in the cloud. Identity has become Windows Hello, 1 in 100,000 false accepts with 95% true positives. The difference between identification, hello, how are you, and authentication, payment instruments, and corporate resources, safer than fingerprints. And gestures have become distinguished with HoloLens called GGV, gaze, gesture, and voice, where I want to be able to just say, tell me more about that. Now, no gesture recognition system understands what the hell I want. No speech recognition system has enough context or will ever have the context to know what that is. And unless you add gaze to it, you can't triangulate in 3D space where your finger's pointing to where you're gazing to know that I was looking at your pen versus something else. And something as simple and fluid as you would do all the time, tell me more about that, requires that innovation in human input. So you can think about the sensors inside of HoloLens as essentially the 3rd generation set of Connect in it, from the microphones to the sensors to the depth cameras, for purposes of really understanding the input so that I can project out authentically the output, which is the holograms.
Yeah, and you, in creating Microsoft Connect, you drove down the price of those sensors and that capability that gave gave life to a whole set of new other industries and capabilities. I mean, I know the number of companies that say, because of Microsoft Connect, we had the sensors to create this capability, and it's incredible. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
This is your chance to speak with Alex, so please take advantage of it. Let's kick it off. We'll start here in the corner and move across. So please.
Can you hear me? I'm a CEO of a robotics company, and we do robotic factories and farms and mines and construction sites. Is it possible to provide the computational power to simulate from log data a mine site, for example, and show the vehicles driving around on this 3D terrain, showing the hotspots for traffic congestion, radio blockage from the sides of the hills, those kinds of things, and be able to, in 3 dimensions, watch this animation in 10x, 20x of mine trucks driving around a site and try to diagnose some of the challenges that we're facing?
So short answer, yes, but not in the way that perhaps you're thinking about it.
Okay.
At the end of the day, HoloLens is a self-contained computer. So it puts you in terms of processing power to think about a state-of-the-art tablet with all of this human environment and object understanding, which is custom silicon. The way to think about it, and we have a lot of these reduced to practice, is think about all this intelligence happening in the cloud. Think about all of this, real-time data crunching, big data problems happening on some kind of backend. In our case, we have tons of examples of this happening on Azure. And then now think about taking that Azure data in a well-formed way and using it to visualize then the data with HoloLens.
So you can bring that, you can communicate that into the simulation, then that extra computational power to make those.
That's exactly correct. I don't know if you're familiar with this tool called Power BI. It's a Microsoft tool that essentially allows you to visualize big data on a flat screen.
Okay.
We've brought Power BI as a holographic tool so that you can visualize all of this massive amount of data in the context of the real world. As an example that comes close to yours, and you can look it up on YouTube, look for Japan Airlines. So Japan Airlines is using big data and a lot of cloud compute to then use HoloLens to visualize all of this data over the airplanes that they're maintaining, inclusive of AI, of being able to future predict maintenance before they actually have an issue.
Nice. If I could, the important thing here is all of a sudden, it's flipping the model. It's making the data visualizable in a way that your brain understands it best, versus the other way around, right? And so, I mean, that's the most amazing thing.
The insight here, and we talked about it today, is how do you take all of this intelligence, all of this AI, which ultimately will live in the scalable cloud, and then create a tool set or a lens to be able to visualize that data, anchored in the real world.
Yeah. For an example, we have some robotic mines running down in South Africa, and we went out with the manager, and standing on the side of the hill looking down, he saw something like, holy cow, why in the world is that happening? It's 3D, he can visualize it, and he just can't get that from the computer screens and the sources of data that he has. Other question is, your track record for innovation is amazing. What has been the key there? Are you a caustic jerk? How have you been able to innovate in a big company like that and disrupt these huge steps in industry?
To some extent, vision, by definition, is something nobody else can see. Otherwise, it would be called common sense. It wouldn't be called vision. So to some extent, if you want to metricate if whatever you're thinking about is visionary, go tell people about it. If they think you're batshit crazy, you have a chance that it's visionary. If they
That's a good quote.
Now, if they shake your head and say, that sounds reasonable, it might be an amazing idea, but visionary it's not. So now, how do you sell a visionary idea since nobody gets it, particularly in the context of a larger enterprise? And to some extent, you have to believe in it with every fiber of your body. And you need to be good at telling stories. In my case, I tell stories through code. If I get in a room and you assume everybody's well-intentioned and super smart, And if it takes more than 5 minutes to agree on something, it's probably a difficult problem. Now, if people are in the business of telling you're batshit crazy and the thing you're thinking about is impossible, I can sit there and say, look, I fell in love with this art form when I was 5, because in software, nothing is impossible. At best, things are improbable, and with a little bit of creativity and a lot of good luck, you can make the improbable possible. That doesn't go very far. But if you write some code and you say, get in front of it and try it, life changes. And to some extent, it takes teamness. It takes a group of people that can take something from vision to cause. Now, causes are intoxicating, and people lose themselves in causes. And that's the thing that becomes very interesting. I tell people this story, and this is essentially the hiring process on any one of these projects that are super top secret before they come out. Imagine you're super well-to-do. You're a well-to-do machine learning person, computer version person. You're at the top of your field. You're the top electrical engineer, mechanical engineer. Imagine you're the guy that worked with Tony Fadell to create the iPod that then was acquired by, Apple, who then created the iPhone and the iPad, and eventually came to help me create HoloLens. Imagine telling the human as you're having an interview with them, hey, go leave Cupertino where you spent your entire life designing hardware, and instead come to Redmond, to Microsoft, to work for me doing this work. And that person says, but what am I going to be working on? And you're like, I can't tell you. The equivalency in this chooses the right team and the right mindset of people where you can transition from vision to cause. Imagine I take you up by the hand. I take you to the top of a very tall mountain and a cliff. We get to the top, I look you in the eyes, and I'm like, jump off the cliff with me. Now, majority of humans that do this trip with me say, no, thank you, and no disrespect, I get it. Imagine 99% of those people turn around. So you focus on the 1% of the people that are left, that were willing to say, sure, let's jump off the cliff. Where's the parachute? And you look at that 1% and you say, what parachute? There is no parachute. Now, 99% of that 1% says you're batshit crazy, and they leave. Now, the 1% of the 1% looks you in the eyes, and you see a sparkle in their eyes. And they just don't even wait for you to jump, they just jump off the cliff. Now they're falling through this cliff, approaching terminal velocity. And you can kind of be the little voice on their shoulders and say, what were you thinking? Why did you jump off this cliff? And every single one of these people will tell you, have you ever built a parachute at terminal velocity? I know I can, and I know with the people around me I can do it. And you know what? One of two outcomes will happen, and let's be outcome-oriented. We're going to build a parachute, and it's going to be epic. Or we're going to crash and die, but at least we're going to have tried. And my favorite Michelangelo quote of all time is one that says, the issue with most humans is not that we shoot too high and we miss it, is that we shoot too low and we reach it. And you want to circle yourself and surround yourself of those people with that mindset, all wearing Teflon suits so that when everybody thinks you're crazy, you're trying to reduce something to practice. And it does not take long for that breed of people to go from vision to cause and to make the improbable possible and really turn science fiction into science fact.
You're good. You're good. Neil.
Great conversation, Alex. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions about the capability of the technology. I'm in the music education space, primarily training educators around the world that teach a methodology of learning piano. We are embarking on a completely new direction this year to create a unique self-study program. And so the conversation about virtual and augmented reality is really important to me and my organization right now. The idea of being able to move away from the two-dimensional online video instruction format into an augmented mixed reality format would be extraordinary if, rather than having me on a screen, to be able to put me in a room at an instrument that a student could potentially walk around and experience, that would be remarkable. What would be a breakthrough would be if the student themselves was able to sit in any location with a virtual reality instrument. So I suppose the question for me would be two things. Are we at a stage, or how far are we away from the physical interaction, the precision, and latency?
Fantastic question. I'll point to two things you should look up after I give you my answer, which is research by the University of Washington, UW. Professor Steve Seitz ran a capstone course on mixed reality, and one of the master's student projects was around learning piano with mixed reality, where you could overlay in real time keys and teaching and AI over the piano. Okay. The other one, and I don't remember the professor's name, but if you send me an email, akipman@microsoft.com, I'll find it, is at Stanford, where they, again, had a graduate student reduce the same vein of education to practice. It's nascent, but you'll find that both of sets of people would probably be comrades in arms on your journey of teaching music. Now, to answer your question about latency, at the end of the day, the thing I'm most proud of with HoloLens, and the thing that I'm unwavering on, is actually the quality of the hologram. In the space that you see the hologram, it is perfect. And when I say it's perfect, I mean it approaches human perception. Now, human perception in the real world comes in two dimensions, like anything in physics. It's about how do you stabilize these little suckers in both space and time. In the quantification of space, you think about not the accuracy of the human eye, which is not a lot, but you got to think about the fact about the whole body of the human. The human, at the end of the day, all of us, were beautiful organic machines, but we're machines nonetheless. We don't really perceive the world, we hallucinate it. You have many different sensors, and the sensors are sending information to your central processing unit, also known as your brain, and it processes them to allow you to perceive the world. Now, at the end of the day, if these sensors disagree with each other, by a very, very small margin, the first thing your brain says is, you're probably not breathing enough. You should take extra oxygen, and you'll see people starting to yawn. If the sensors are still disagreeing with each other, your brain gets a little bit more worried and said the only reason that this could have happened is if you ingested something that's obstructing something, so you see people start burping. And ultimately, if the sensors still disagree with each other, your brain presses the panic button and then says, hey, the only way that you can have these sensors disagree with each other this much is if you either ingested or were bitten with something poisonous, and now you need to throw up and nauseate because I want you to expel that from your body to get the sensors to agree with each other anymore. Now, HoloLens, despite of the physical comfort 45-minute conversation we had, in the laboratory across population of Earth will never let anybody fatigue. And it's because we get those sensors to agree. Now, the key sensors here is your IMU, or your inertial motion unit in the back of your brain, which has to agree with your vestibular system in front of your eyes. The precision there of HoloLens is 0.1 milliradians. That is 0.1 millimeters at 1 meter. It's less than a human hair of motion that I have to get precise. So from that perspective, that's precision in space. Your question was about precision in time. So now let's talk about precision in time, or latency of this world. The reasonable way, and this is all new science we had to invent for you to think about it, is in chunks of time, or frequencies of time. At the end of the day, if my imprecision or latency is the same rate of speed as the moon moving across the Earth, that's a really long frequency, right? You won't perceive it as a human. It doesn't really matter. You don't nauseate looking at the moon move through the sky in the middle of the night. If you shorten that time span, and you say the frequency is within an hour, and things are slightly drifting, that's how you feel when you're drunk. The world spins around, that makes you nauseate. That's no good. Now, the main interesting one is the one that happens in the 0 to 30 hertz band. Now, I'm painting these little suckers on the back of your eye at 240 times per second, or 240 hertz. So I have 240 times in that millisecond span of time to get the thing slightly wrong by more than a human hair. The result of that is you'll see the thing vibrate, or jitter. And jitter happens in that 0 to 30 hertz band. And this is where you perceive the most nausea, because the sensor on the back of your head is trying to reconcile it all. HoloLens stabilizes it in 9 milliseconds, which is the perception of the human eye. So the latency of a hologram, or you would fatigue, is 9 milliseconds. Now just think about that concept for a minute, and I apologize for all the computer jargon, but this one is kind of fascinating. If you think about the amount of time a computer takes, just the GPU, the graphical processing unit, just a little teeny slice, if you have a really good state-of-the-art GPU that usually goes at 60 frames per second, that time slice is 16 milliseconds, 1/6. Now, I told you that from the first photon out that hits the world, that needs to bounce back from all of these sensors into our holographic processing unit, 16 milliseconds. Now, I told you that from the first photon out that hits the world, that needs to bounce back from all of these sensors into our holographic processing unit, 16 milliseconds. Now, I told you that from the first photon out that hits the world, that needs to bounce back from all of these sensors into our holographic processing unit, to us munging this data, to sending it to the CPU, to being processed by the GPU, to then generating photons on the back of your mind. That whole round trip needs to happen in 9 milliseconds, which will tell you it's impossible. This is when people are laughing me out of the room. Alex, I'm super smart. The GPU state-of-the-art is 16. You need to stabilize these things at 9. There's no way. It's impossible. And I would tell you that based on our holographic processing unit magic and a lot of future prediction, we get latency of HoloLens in 9 milliseconds at 0.1 milliradians of precision, which to translate super long answer that I apologize for the technical aspects of it, from the perspective of you're talking about, it's real time.
Thank you.
Joe.
Yes, Alex, what you're saying right now is just awesome. But I'm a federal contractor, and so one of the things
contractor.
Yeah, so one of the things that I see, the federal government is not the ones that go for really forward-looking technology right now. But if we had something like that during Hurricane Katrina, in a situation, say, where you have to have EPA respond. They're broken down in different regions of the country, and they get up there. You can have the first responder have this machine, and the person that's in Chicago who has a specific experience, not the guy that responded, can actually put that machine on and say, hey, you need to do this, 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 and this. But the one question I have now is how do you connect it in a place that's been destroyed, or say in a very remote area where connectivity is difficult? How would you do that so that we would have the immediacy of a guy being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, get into the office, and you have to wait 30 minutes to get to the office, you can put your lens on, you can see what's happening, to shut off this whatever, so people don't die. How do you do that so that we can maintain connectivity and have the power to have that connectivity in a very remote space?
Very carefully, I guess, is the answer. I will tell you we're doing a ton of research with public sector, inclusive of a lot of prototyping and proof of concepts with the US government. So from that perspective, there's actually a ton of innovation, particularly around these types of experiences that you're talking about, where you're trying to create situation rooms for whatever purpose, to be able to have these centralized situation rooms, kind of like you see in movies, right? With stuff on a table that's holographic, that's visualizing 3D maps, 3D data, big data overlaid with maps, and have the people, particularly in the situation rooms, use these technologies to be more connected and more real time in how they're connecting with the respondents. It also have research on the other side so that people on the actual affected sites are wearing these types of products like HoloLens, so that the people in the situation rooms can see through their eyes. And there's something super magical that happens when you can actually see the gaze of someone else. And to make it more magical, then the people in the situation room get to annotate through those people's eyes, right? And start putting waypoints or information or heat maps or drag and drop content over the real world on the other side. So that's very much something that we are working with today with different governments, which doesn't answer your question about connectivity. And there I would say my HoloLens doesn't provide any special magic. It's just a computer. I hope with the advent of all the great stuff we heard with 5G today and low orbit satellites and things like that, connectivity is something that is ubiquitous. But as long as you're connected, and let's assume connectivity continues to go up, the bandwidth to do these things is not high. So for you to transmit holographic information, particularly the way that it compresses, since you're compressing a single viewport at a time, it's no more than you would, transmitting a video through a cell phone.
Wow. So, I'm sorry, that same scenario, but with a first responder responding to a wreck or somebody that's, physically injured badly, and how do you have an expert, save them there in the minute, doing the same thing?
Absolutely. So we're doing research with, Doctors Without Borders on exactly that. Imagine being in Africa somewhere and you have some situation you need to operate with someone, there's some epidemic, something that's happening. And imagine being able to round trip with an expert back at home that can not only see through your eyes as you're looking at this patient, but annotate over and say, cut this, don't cut that, investigate this, and see the reaction in real time on the other side, and have that conversation happen in real time. This is very similar to the technology we deployed in the International Space Station last year, where astronauts are doing the same thing.
Well, awesome.
Excellent.
Alex,
Thank you, Joe.
so much.
Thank you. Next, please. We're going to try and get the next 4, and then we'll have to We'll have to wrap here, please.
Thank you so much for that perfect segue. I'm a surgeon, and that is exactly the question that I have right now. Medical education is clearly archaic, and believe it or not, so is surgery in so many ways. I have to look down at the patient and look up to take a look at photographs or x-rays, and then look over my shoulder to take a look at some other things. I want that all in front of me. And I've been looking at the HoloLens on YouTube for ages. I was so excited. I'm an early adopter.
Thank you.
And have been using it, and it undoubtedly solves a lot of problems that we have in surgery, one of which is, as you describe, the ability to take all these aging surgeons who want to have purpose in life, and they'll be able to educate not only the new ones here in developed countries, but also those in third world countries. So there's a tremendous need, not only for immediate, but far. So the question is now raised, what is the best way to participate in developing apps for the HoloLens specific to our industry? Do we raise capital, hire programmers and creators, or somehow find out what's currently being developed and somehow get involved? Or do we wait and that we just become early adopters? Because I know I'd like to be more involved.
Whatever you do, don't wait. All of the other answers seem amazing. Something that we've done, because it is kind of a new world, is we've created this thing called holographic academies. We right now have one in London and we have one in Seattle, and hopefully soon we'll have one in San Francisco and one opening up in China. But think about it as courseware to just learn how to participate as a creator in this holographic landscape. The other thing that we have that builds on top of that is we've created an agency program. Think of it as a 6-month courseware where people that are betting their lives on this new mixed reality space come, and we essentially certify them as mixed reality agencies. And then when people that don't necessarily have software engineers, that don't have the background on creating the applications, just have the idea, be it a VC, be it a company, be it an individual, we start matchmaking them. You say, hey, here's a set of agencies that are capable of doing this work. Here's a set of people that are dying to innovate in the space, and we kind of try to matchmake as much as we can. And if you search for Holographic Academy, you can find a lot more information about both the agency program as well as the courseware for it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real honor to be in the room with you.
Thank you.
I have 2 HoloLens, early adopter as well. I own a 200-employee software company. We're bootstrapped, been writing code most of my life. This is the most impressive piece of hardware I've ever written software for. The challenge that we have, we were early adopters for Oculus, DK1 and DK2, Epson Moveria BT200, which was really hard to write software for, ODG, who evidently licensed 2 years ago your optics to you guys for HoloLens. And the real challenge we've had is we've plowed several $100,000 into AR, and Peter asked us to ask investment-related questions last time, so I'm going to do that. We put a lot of money into Oculus, DK1, DK2, the RC1, then the final production version. We plowed money into Moveria BT200. But we keep having to scrap all of our code and start over every year. So we keep having to push reset on the dev process, whether it's a major Unity upgrade or all the APIs changing, a major UE4 upgrade, and whether it's writing your own 3D engine or somebody else's. So investment-wise, it's been a very challenging space to invest in. Because the hardware is iterating so quickly and the platforms are not upgrade compatible, and we're having to rewrite all of our code every year. And so I'm trying to get some clearer vision. Your platform is by far the most interesting to write software for. But then I go to CES 2 weeks ago and I see R9 from ODG, which is even wider field of view and clearer vision, and so you keep getting mixed signals on what platform is the right one to build for, Android or this, and for your regular run-of-the-mill software developers that don't have Magic Leap money, we've got to figure out what to invest in and where, and not have to push reset every single year on the platform. So I'd love some advice on dev and platform and investment strategy.
It's a great question, and I'll obviously seem biased in my answer, so I'll apologize ahead of time. But turns out that generating and fostering an ecosystem is something very few people on Earth know how to do, have the capacity to do, or have done in the past, and are likely to do in the future. So to some extent, a lot of these examples that you talk about, they're startups themselves. And they have a component or a piece of the puzzle. And in most cases that you just mentioned, they have usually the componentry of the hardware. What they don't have is everything else that it takes to foster an ecosystem of developers to really generate a secular trend in computing. Microsoft is by no means the only company that knows how to do that, but I can probably count in one of my hands the types of companies that have done that and know how to do that.
And you've done it before. And you've done it before.
And we have done it before, that's right? So to me, you're looking at Apple, you're looking at Google, you're looking at Microsoft, and you're looking at Amazon as companies that have generated an ecosystem. And to a great extent, a huge part of that is never breaking backwards compatibility. A huge part of that is thinking ahead of time of how you generate something and how you foster these developers to not have to reinvent the wheel every single time you do something. We launched HoloLens last year. For the first time, and have since, and as I'm sure you have tracked, released 3 updates to the operating system. We just now introduced different categories of products that tether to a PC, that work on desktop. And at the end of the day, our value proposition in Windows remains this idea of one universal platform. One universal platform or UWPs that doesn't change over time with a ecosystem of middleware on top of it. Right? And middleware is what makes your life easier at the end of the day, because you start to take a dependency on middleware you care about, and you start developing applications and experiences on top of it in a sure-footed way. Right? So from that perspective, I can only answer the question from my perspective. I care deeply about this developer motion. I think it's the requisite of being able to go from it's a cool tech demo to it changes the world. And a lot of that developer in the loop requires you to build a stable platform that innovates over time, but without leaving your developers behind.
And that was our problem with Oculus, right? They broke backwards compatibility, so we had to rewrite on every release. Is tablet-based AR done in a gimmick? Is it just going to be holograms on wearables?
So I'm going to ask us to move because we got 5 minutes left. I want to grab a few more questions.
Thank you.
But
Awesome
Alex, you'll be here at the reception.
I am going to be here later.
So
just come find me.
Find
we'll
each
keep
other.
Having this conversation.
All right, let's come back over here. And next question, please.
Yeah, thank you guys for leading the discussion, first of all. I'm very curious about events. So we're in the wine industry. I think there's a very fun opportunity to do augmented wine tastings or winery tours. But I'm curious to get your perspective on how this changes the experience that people will have with events like the conference that we're at right now, for example. I'm just curious to open that up.
I think it's a very interesting space where at the end of the day, the more performance-oriented the space or the event is, the more it's about the people and the performers, and you're trying to use this information not to take people away from the experience, but rather to augment it, right? I think the potential is incredible in this particular case for see-through, self-contained devices. Like in events, the tether is going to get in the way, and the opaque behavior is going to remove the performance base and the fact that humans are in an event to connect with other humans, right? So if you then look at what can you do with self-contained see-through devices in those spaces, it's super interesting. Right? I'm right now doing a project with Marco Tempest. I don't know if you know him, TED speaker, cyber magician, uses technology to do fun things. And we're exploring. And it's back to like, look, quantum physics dictates, energy in the universe is finite. You can't destroy any, you can't create any. At best, you can transform it, which means none of us gets to create anything. Everything is kind of already there, and our job in life is to discover it. Right? Talk to a good sculptor. They'll say, look, the David is already within. Don't go too near the nose or you'll break it. Don't stay too far away from it or nobody will be able to appreciate it. So from that perspective, in the event, we're in the discovery phase. From Marco Tempest to Cirque du Soleil to many other people we're working on to find where's that level of magic where the holograms are not taking away from the performance, but rather they're adding to it in a meaningful way.
Mark.
Thank you.
Alex, great presentation. Thank you. I'm a real estate developer, and I wanted to explore the architectural part of this. A couple questions. How long would it take an architectural firm committed to using this technology to get up to speed with it? And what type of efficiencies are created in terms of, I would assume that the design phase is probably more expensive using this technology, although I don't really know that. But is there a efficiency in terms of the time in which a project is built and also the cost on which it is built?
That's a great question, and this is the one space that I would say, it's not one of discovery where you have to go create your own experience. Our partnership with Trimble is exactly that. So in partnering with Trimble, they have, Trimble is a tools company or a middleware company or an ISV that essentially makes architects and architecture firms successful in this flow with all their tool set. They've brought all that tool set to HoloLens and launched it this October at Trimble Dimensions. So if you just work with the Trimble guys, you can buy HoloLenses, download SketchUp, and start using the same familiar tools that architects use today, and you're off to the races. You don't need to write a line of code. The kind of benefits you get from it, when you're an architect, you kind of get it. I had to learn all of this. But think about the maquette process. Right? Think about, $30,000 to go print a maquette for the thing you're building. Think about the cycle time, even with the advent of 3D printing, on what it takes to do that, and then think about meeting with your client to talk about it. Now think about doing the same thing holographically and the cycle time of that and the iteration time of that, where you're not using clay or 3D prints or something else to do these things, but you can do them in real time. And now your client can have experiences with you. You can change the model in real time and make adjustments in real time. And that sell aspect to clients changes dramatically when the client can walk through the space or visualize the space as if they were sitting in the actual place. So Trimble actually has stats on a lot of this in terms of productivity gains, shorten of development cycle, and how it's transforming their industry. And out of all of these experiments, I would say architecture in particular is one that nowadays, because of our partnership with Trimble, requires no setup. 5 minutes and you're off to the races.
Excellent. Last question from our digital community. AJ.
So this one comes from Sanjay. He asks, what advice do you have for VR companies who are currently writing code for VR in anticipation of AR? Should VR companies be wary of the inevitable breakout of AR? And as a follow-on, he asks, what is the killer app for augmented reality? What is the app that's going to be built that will allow this technology to become ubiquitous?
I go back and I say, if you're a VR developer, think about mixed reality. And think about the things that are mixed reality about the experience and go invest in those. At the end of the day, I think about virtual reality today in two aspects. There's the things you see with things like cardboard and things like that, also known as 3 degrees of freedom. Things that are good enough for you to spectate content, but not good enough for you to interact with content. Right? Things are super far away and you move forward, so does the content with you. So I would say in VR, focus on 6 degrees of freedom platforms where you can actually stand up and walk around and the actual virtual environment stays anchored in. Examples there would be, Oculus, HTC Vive, or, the 5 devices that we announced October of last year. That tool set, which is an interactive one, it's about interacting with the environment, is all within this mixed reality umbrella, and that's where you want to start investing in. So that's what I would say to virtual reality. And to the question of what's the killer experience for mixed reality, I am determined that the killer experience for mixed reality is presence. Is this idea that you can be present in places that you're not in right now and in time frames that you're not in right now. And this idea of being able to teleport to virtual environments or real environments will fundamentally transform how we go about our lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Kipman. Thank you, pal. That was great.
Thank you.
All right. Listen, my top conclusions here are pretty simple. I want you to pull out your bold breakthroughs and write down what it is your takeaway here. And my conclusions are pretty simple. I believe that this technology is coming. It's going to be as ubiquitous eventually as the mobile phone. It's going to become part of how we interact with the world around us. It's something which, if I could go back 20 years and show you what the mobile phone could do today, right, it'd be almost impossible. You're seeing a slice of the world 5 years from now. How does it change your imagination of the products you're going to create, the investments you're going to do? For me, I literally want to bring this conversation into my management team. into my brainstorm sessions. This is a chance for you to create the future you want. The technologies are tools. You're going to create products. You're going to create realities. You're going to create companies. You're going to create interactions from this. So I love and geek out on the digital detail that Alex was bringing, right? This is a man who is a creator of this technology, and I'm so thankful to have him here.